Hi, everybody, and welcome back into the relationship arena where we talk all things relationship. And I go through some of the things that come up in session with my couples and individuals as we dive into what goes on in relationships. And in this video, I want to spend some time talking about nurturing the relationship. So there is so much stuff that comes out when things are in trouble, and we talk about dating and we talk about divorce, but I want to focus on the long-term relationship. Those of you that have been committed and have been working at it for a number of years. And when that happens, life happens. So the relationship changes, you change, people evolve. How do you keep things fresh in that relationship? So often I see couples and everyone thinks there has to have been a huge drama for people to end up in couples therapy. And sometimes they just have got disconnected and they're just trying to find that way back to each other. And you know, one of somebody I really kind of admire, she's done a YouTube video here with me before, talked about the fact that you need to treat your relationship as though it is the most important job. So let's dive into this. Okay, when you are dating, you think it's all impulsive, you think it's all exciting, and it is exciting, but it's not as impulsive as you think. You spend time thinking about where you're going to meet, how you're going to meet, what activities are going to happen, what you're going to wear. You put a lot of time and thought into that relationship and everything that goes along with it. So whilst you think that it's all impulsive at the time, there's been a lot of planning going into it. Then you get together and you don't put that time in anymore. And a lot of the time, that's because life takes over. Perhaps you are now long term and you're living together, or you're married and you've got jobs and you've got a house to run and you've got other commitments. Perhaps you've started a family and that family takes all your time. And what we talk about, trying to have date night. People feel very differently about date night depending on who you are. I'm not sure where I sit on date night. That's for a whole other episode. Depends what you're expecting from date night, right? It depends what you want to get at the end of date night. But the fact is, they kind of talk about making time for each other. And I think that's the crucial thing. What you don't do a lot of the time when life takes over is you put everything else in front of the relationship. People will say, well, the top priority is the finances, so I go out and I work and we need the finances because that has a huge impact on it. Or the top priority are the children come first. And so then everything else comes second. And here's a controversial thought. Does that need to be the case? I'm talking about loving, committed families here, okay? Of course, your children are a priority, a high priority. You're working on that together, okay? But what is the anchor in that household in long-term relationships is the relationship between the two people involved, the mum and the dad, or the man and the wife, or whatever partner you have at the time, the mum and the mum, the dad and the dad, the blended partner, whatever relationship is going on in that home at the time, that is the most vital relationship, because from that everything else underpins. It underpins what the morals and the values are. It underpins how they see relationships, how children see relationships, what they recognize as normal in relationships. So actually taking a step back and saying, what would it look like if my partner was my top priority? And then people say, oh, but you've got to think of yourself first. It's all about self-care. None of this is saying that you're not caring for yourself. None of this is saying that you are just being accepting of everything your partner does. But I want you to take a moment and imagine, what would it look like if you were your partner's top priority and they were your top priority? How would that change what's going on in the house at the time? What would that look like in terms of your connections and your interactions? You don't have to have a full date night. It can be as simple as remembering to check in with your partner regularly. It can be as simple as giving them that hug. It can be as simple as when you walk in the door, you always get a kiss. And when you walk out, you always get a kiss. It can be as simple as sitting together and having a cup of coffee. It can be as simple as simply saying to your partner, what's going on for you today? Many times people say, well, I asked them, how are you? And then their partner says, oh, I'm fine. End of conversation. What about if you said, what's going on for you today? What's happened for you today? This is opening up the conversation, showing that you're interested and showing that you want to interact. So nurturing your relationship is absolutely vital. You've got to put effort into it. You've got to feed it. You've got to grow it. You've got to love it. You've got to, you've got to do all the things you would do if you were looking after somebody else. And so often, because you're in a long-term committed relationship, because you feel secure, you suddenly realize that that hasn't been a priority. So that's my message for today. Treat your relationship as if it is the most important job that you have, because actually it is. Everything else stems from that. And ask yourself, what would that look like if your relationship, if your partner was your most important thing, your top priority? What would that look like? And then what would that change in your relationship? I'm going to be back here shortly with more episodes. We're going to be covering, the difference between what we call a date night and a sex date. Okay, very different. We're going to be looking at the concept of what we mean by micro cheating, which is very, very different depending on the relationship that you're in. We're going to look at what happens when infidelity happens in a relationship and how couples come into session and work through that. So there's some great topics coming along. And we're also going to be talking about reigniting intimacy when things just aren't as good as they used to be. So there's lots and lots coming up here, as well as many, many other topics that come up in session. So if you don't want to miss one of these episodes, then please do like and subscribe. Episodes come out weekly for this season. I've also got some great guests coming in as well, just to kind of add a bit of va-va-voom and to get some different opinions on all things relationships. So hope to see you soon again. Have a wonderful day. And I'm going to say goodbye from here in the relationship arena.